Hey guys, we're here with Kate Simon, the head coach of Glover U, and of course, if you're watching this video, then you might be wondering, what is this Kate Simon chick all about? So we're going to spend a few minutes talking with Kate, a little bit about her background, her history, and give you a better idea of who she is, where she came from, and why she is qualified to not only coach you, but to lead the coaches here at Glover U. So Kate, we've known each other now since
2006. Yeah, 2006,
So
2007.
can you take us back to 2006?
2006, I met you. We were in Coldwell Banker office in Northville, Michigan.
Yep.
You were teaching a session with a small group of real estate agents on price reductions. You know, everybody was taking listings at the time, and we were working on making sure they're appropriately priced. And I had to be, 18, 19 at the time, something like that. And I remember sitting there and thinking, okay, you know, I'd rather be at the pool, I'd rather be anywhere else.
Yeah,
and then, you know,
because you're off for summer.
Yeah, I was home for the summer, for wherever, college. And ultimately what happened after the class is, you know, I loved the dialogue, I loved what you were doing, and we started having conversation about, you know, oh, I'm gonna build this team one day, you know, one day I'm gonna have my own team, and it was like, okay. Yeah, I'm finishing college, I'm finishing my degree. And then one summer, I think it was the next summer, I reached out to you. You had started Jeff Glover and Associates. It had just been opened for a couple months at this point, and you were looking for inside sales agents. Yeah. So,
and inside sales agents, for those that aren't familiar, are essentially a licensed real estate agent making outbound phone calls to generate clients.
Right.
So you took that position right away, and you started doing that.
Yes, exactly. So I started as an inside sales agent. I was one of the first, you know, of course, with Christy Glover, and we spent the summer just pounding the phones, right? I mean, really the training I got, and I joke with everybody all the time because now, of course, we're a training organization, but the training I got back in the day was a stack of 150 expireds and a script and said, all right, figure it out, kid.
Yeah.
And, you know, I talked to 40 or 50 people a day, every single day, that entire summer.
And you were how old at that time?
Like 19, yeah.
So just fresh out of real estate license, but you were also still in college.
Yeah.
So this is just something you did for the summer.
Yep, it was something I did for the summer. The pay seemed good. You guys seemed like a fun group, and it seemed like a fun way to, you know, work for the summer.
Close to home, right? You live down the street, you're not too far from there.
Yep.
So then, at what point in time did you decide to come back? Because I believe you finished college and still made the decision to return to real estate.
Yeah. So it was that summer that I actually decided, like, I'm incredibly passionate about this. I love problem solving. I mean, keep in mind, I think at the time, actually, it was closer to 08, 09, because the conversations we were having were, you know, people were losing their house, people were underwater. I mean, it was that market. And even though the conversations themselves were tough, I loved the idea of helping people. I loved the idea that, you know, our income and our business didn't have a ceiling on it.
Sure.
And all of the conversations I was having with my peers in college were, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse, I want to be this, I want to be that. And, you know, good, bad, right, or wrong, I knew that there was a container that would fit within. And I loved the idea that there was no container on this. So that summer I decided, I got to get my degree as quickly as possible, and I'm going to jump right into real estate.
Yeah, because, you know, of course it was a thing to do. Everyone's got it. You got to finish college, you got to get your degree.
Right,
but you knew full well that you were going into real estate.
Yeah, and even like I would go back to college and my friends are saying, oh yeah, what are you going to do after college? And I was like, oh, I'm going to sell real estate. And of course the market was like the worst it's ever been.
Yeah.
So I would get looks from people like, oh my gosh, this chick is crazy. I can't believe, like, you're doing what? You're getting a college degree and you're going to go
out of the business. You know, cities are filing for bankruptcy, and I want to get right into that industry.
In fact, I remember this was the summer after I graduated, and I was like hanging out at a friend's house. I don't really remember. And I remember that her mom was like, all right, so you're doing real estate for now, and then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that people didn't like think that was like, you know, a thing they expected me to get. You know, you went to college, they expected me to get a different job.
Corporate
and I was like,
America or something, right?
Yeah, I was like, no, like this is it. This is what I'm going to do. So.
And tell us about your first few years then as a returning agent, basically coming back and start, you know, being out meeting with clients, going from the ISA to the OSA role. Talk to us about that.
So first of all, people are always shocked to hear this, but Jeff made me go through the ISA program again. So even though I already spent 90 days on the phone.
No credit for time served. Zero credit for time served.
So I had to start from scratch, and it was like grueling, and it was a lot of calls, a lot of rejection. And then I think it was November, December that year that, you know, I ultimately was able to be a salesperson on your team. And I put my first buyer deal together. I think in December it was a new construction deal in South Lyon. And yeah, the first year was like an incredibly steep learning curve. I think, I mean, in your system, and I credit it to your system, I think I made my first paycheck within 4 months, but that was 4 months of doing everything the right way every day,
following it.
not like, you know, kind of trying to figure it out.
So you became Rookie of the Year, and you were able to become, you know, one of our top producing agents and save up money to fulfill somewhat of a dream. I don't know if it was a lifelong dream. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So over the years, of course, you know, Jeff, passionate about growth and training, we would go to these real estate seminars, and one of them happened to be in San Diego, California, and I had never been at the time. And I remember getting off the plane and thinking, this is fantastic.
Why do we live in Michigan?
Why don't people live here? Don't you see the average price point? Like, why aren't more people living here? So it was always kind of on my like radar, like, one day I'm going to move to California, one day I'm going to move to California. So the stars aligned. I saved up, you know, 6 months of living expenses, and finally just like pulled the rug out from underneath and said, okay, we're doing it.
I'm out.
2013, in the fall, I moved to Malibu, California.
Awesome. And during that time, if I remember correctly, you had a lot of people reaching out to you because our business in Detroit was growing at a pretty rapid pace. And so people had seen what you accomplished and saw that you were able to make this move and fulfill, you know, at least a temporary dream at that time. And so people were saying, hey, share with me what you learned or your experience with Jeff. Will you coach me? And you actually started coaching some agents, didn't you?
Right. So if you've ever been to California, Malibu to be specific, it's a very sharp learning curve, very different market than Detroit. Who would have thought? Not me at 24 years old, right? So yeah, it was a very...
Of all the markets, she picks Malibu.
Yeah, like that makes sense, right?
Could have went to like, I don't know, Irvine or somewhere where it's a little more normal.
Exactly. So the first couple months were really scary. I mean, I was completely out of my element. I mean, we're talking about houses that aren't even hitting the MLS that are selling, and it's like, I don't get it. How do you sell a house if it's not on the MLS? And it's all relationship based. I mean, that market in and of itself is just a different world. So my financial plans for what I was going to do and how long I was going to stay there and succeed, I mean, my money was running out. So I started coaching people on the East Coast, and I kind of hit this point after I burned through a certain amount of runway. I got down to 60 days, and I said, if I'm going down swinging. And if I'm going back to Detroit, I'm going back saying I did absolutely everything that I could.
And you're not leaving until you can say
that.
No,
100%. And correct. So I would start my day at 4 o'clock in the morning. Daryl Cross was one of my first, you know, clients. Chad Gishi, he was one of them as well. And I would have these 45-minute coaching sessions starting at 4 o'clock in the morning, because Pacific Standard Time, it was 7 a.m. their time. And I would coach them on just prospecting, because at the time, that was the only thing I felt comfortable saying, like, okay, I mastered this, nothing else, but I could say I mastered that. So each day I started with 3 hours of coaching. I would, you know, take a shower, you know, leave for the office by 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be knocking on my first door in a neighborhood in California by 9 a.m. And I would do that until 12 o'clock every single day, 5 days a week, talking to 40 people. I remember I even called you one time. I was like, you know, taking a break from my door knocking, and you're like, you talk to how many people a day? And I was like, yeah.
And I'm like, cold doors? Really? Seriously?
Right.
I didn't even teach that.
And then I would do 2 open houses, sometimes 4 every weekend. I would either do 2 on a Saturday, 2 on a Sunday, or 1 on a Saturday, 1 on a Sunday. And within 30 days, I put 4 contracts together, which totaled about $2.5 million.
Gross volume.
Gross volume. And that was enough runway to get me to the next point.
Yeah, buy you another month or 2 in the business.
Yeah, correct. So I kept playing that game until, like, I actually was, you know, selling there on a consistent basis. And yeah.
And so you got to a point where you had a pretty sizable business. You had a consistent income.
Yeah,
you were comfortable with your living situation. You moved a few times. I mean, you upgraded your residence, and then you moved back to Michigan. So what caused you to come back?
So I know that you were having these separate conversations with Taylor back home, but I specifically remember a day, it was the end of 2016, and I was doing my business planning for 2017. I went to a coffee shop in Dana Point, and I was like, what do I actually want my life to look like and feel like? Because although at this point I was 3 or 4 years into building a real estate business there, it didn't feel the way that it did in Detroit. And I couldn't put my finger on why. Was it who I was doing it with? Was it the clientele? Was it because I was away from friends and family? I couldn't pinpoint why I wasn't fulfilled doing this thing. So I sat down and I wrote it out, and I said, I don't know what it looks like, but it involves working with Jeff. And I still have the email, and I'll have to send it to you. But I basically typed out this plan, because this is Jeff's classic line, right? If you have an idea and Jeff says to you, hey, type it out, send it to me, and we'll talk about it later. So that's what I did. And I typed out a plan that essentially, for me personally, not knowing you were also having these conversations, outlined what it would look like representing, working for JGA, and also working for agents outside of that, talking about your mission, right? And so, you know, it sits in his inbox. Hey, I'm not really focused on it right now. Hey, not focused on it right now. And then 6 or 7 months later, you randomly call me, right? I'm standing in my kitchen, and I remember, Jeff's calling me. Hey, how's it going? And you were like, okay, it's time. Our first event is in 6 months. This is what it's going to look like. This is our vision. And I said, okay. I hung up the phone with you, and I called Andrew immediately, and I said, this is it. This is 100% what I've been waiting for. This is going to be the thing. And
so you came back. You were still living in California. You came to that event. Was in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. That was our first event ever. Maybe 200 people there. I mean, a small event, but we had enough material and enough content and enough YouTube videos, we had enough out there to believe that we would be able to at least get 100 people in the room, and we ended up with 200. And you came out, and we signed our first coaching client at that particular event. Numero uno in Glover U. And so it gave you kind of a picture of what it could be, right? The look and the feel of it. And of course, it was small then. And what caused you to say, you know what, let's move home?
Well, I knew before that we were eventually going to move home, and we talked about it, right? And it was more or less, okay, when Glover, you got to this point where we knew that there was no going back, because I think whether you admit it or I admit it or not, I mean, this was a really big pipe dream. And you had JGA, and I had literally a whole life, a house, everything in California, and there's a little piece of us that's like, all right, let's try this out. And there was a specific day in mid-2018 in July, and you and I both had the same conversation where we both decided, and we said, okay, this is going to work. This has to work. I'm not looking back anymore, no matter what we do. And that was the same day that things lined up in our personal life too, and we decided, okay, we're moving home. And so by August of 2018, we were fully home back in Birmingham, Michigan, which is where Glover U's headquartered. And at that point, I still had 10 clients at the time that I was coaching virtually, but I knew I needed to be in the environment with you and TK, ultimately building it every day.
So let's talk about that for a second. So obviously you had your own coaching client group going, and it was important to me to have you in our environment, around our team. Obviously the Glover U doesn't exist today if JGA doesn't succeed. And so I wanted you present around our systems, our models, our sales meetings, our 10 a.m.s, our role playing. You were there for that. And so at some point in time, as Glover U grew and people were signing up for coaching, you were our coach. There were no other coaches, right? So talk to me a little bit about that experience, basically taking on clients and growing from working with agents that were brand new in the business to today, now you're working with some of our best clients.
I mean, I heard this phrase just recently in the last year, and it was very much like we're building the plane as we're flying it. I would get some questions from clients where, quite frankly, I didn't know the answer, or I knew the answer, but I wasn't confident in the answer. And there was a lot of trial and error. I mean, I still give so much credit to our early day coaching clients,
for sticking around for us.
Because there were kinks, I remember there was one day, we had multiple group calls going on, and I gave everybody, for every program, the same group line. So at the same time, there's all these different groups signing in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, so there was a lot of trial and error for what works for group programs and what works for one-on-ones, and we were ultimately able to, which I'm also passionate about, help build the back of house systems, help build a needs analysis, help build a process of when you decide to sign on with Glover U, what's your experience before you even get placed with a coach? How are you placed with a coach? What's your experience while you're with a coach? What's your experience at an event? So really it started with, okay, I'm coaching people, and it really built out from what are the needs, and again, how could we make this an unreal experience? And we solved each problem as it came up from there.
Can you share with us your typical coaching client today that you work with?
So my typical coaching client today, my sweet spot is anybody who has more or less mastered sales. Not to say that we can't get better at sales, not to say that we're done, but they've sold 25, 40 deals a year. They might be ready to build a team, but most of our conversations are talking about leverage and leadership. That's really the world that I work in. That's not to say that I can't coach people on skills.
You still have brand new agents, and you have mastered all the skills, and we have tons of examples now in our audiences of agents
Right.
who were brand new or newer that are doing 50, 100, 150, 200 transactions a year,
Right.
and they worked with you.
Yes.
So you can do that. And you also have a certain clientele of agents, I think of the group that we went and saw in Missouri that, because you've been so close to JGA and the way we've operated, I mean, we have, 40, 50 sales agents now, right? So you've been in that environment. So you work with a lot of our top clients also that have
Sure.
large offices, large brokerages, large teams.
Yeah.
Right?
The best way I'll describe it, and one of my coaching clients, she actually described it this way, that if their business is a car, a functioning car, it rolls, the wheels roll, they can turn it on. I'm the person that literally takes everything apart and puts it back together the way it's supposed to be. And I love doing that because here's what happens. When an agent starts building a team, they're making decisions 1 foot in front of them. They're not thinking about the scalable 1 year, 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
So ultimately what they do, they might get away with this decision, they might get away with that decision, but inevitably it's like they're in a maze and they're gonna hit that brick wall.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I'm stuck over here, I'm handcuffed over there. How did I get here?
Yep.
So we dismantle and we start from the beginning of, okay, great. What does your recruiting, training, and retaining look like? What is your value proposition to agents? What is your leadership plan? What is your personal production plan?
Yep.
We literally strip it down and put all those components back to place so they can push through whatever threshold that they inevitably hit
Yeah.
when they called us.
Yep, love that. My final question, Kate, is why should someone coach with you and why should they coach with Glover U? So if you want to answer that in 2 parts or combine your answer.
Well, number one, you should coach with Glover U because there's not another organization where the coaches are physically on the ground doing it every day, where the coaches are
At a high level.
At a high level. So, and this is a separate conversation, but the vetting process we go to bring these coaches on is
Oh my gosh.
not lighthearted. I mean, there's a million times where we've had people come up to us and it's either not right now or it's just no in general. It's incredibly important to us, especially because of the size of who we are and our reputation, that the people we bring into the world are incredibly vetted and they've earned the right to be there by production, not just being, a social media king or queen, but they have earned the right to be there. Number two, they live and breathe our culture. So just like I think over the last 12 years, I would like to think I'm somewhat of an extension of you.
Yeah.
The coaches are somewhat of an extension of me, which is then an extension of you.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're very careful in what that looks like. So number one, there's not another organization where people are doing it at a better or high level, and I can confidently say that. And coaching with me, quite frankly, I mean, I don't know if you're going to find another coach who's going to be more honest and authentic and genuine with you about what you need to do to get to the next level. I mean, I kind of laugh today because people think of me as like, oh, you're the tough coach, and it's like, I'm actually just being honest with you. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what, quite frankly, I needed somebody to tell me when I was in California running out of money. And I'm not willing to take that relationship lightly and let somebody fail because I'm afraid to hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
So if that's your speed, that's why you would coach with me.
That's a perfect example, and I will finish with this. I have said for years, you are built to be a coach. I mean, your
you.
characteristics and your personality style and your care and compassion for people and
Thank you.
and their needs. I mean, you are built to be a coach, and so there's no wonder why Glover U is growing at the rate it is, because obviously you're developing some great coaches, and you're also developing some great clients. So
Thank you.
awesome. All right, thanks guys.
Thanks, guys.